Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Jacob Licklider here, and Doctor Who is both back, but I was unable to get weekly videos out of about it. And for that, I apologize. My coverage of Doctor Who Series 15 is going to be sort of mixed like this. It's probably going to be all episodes grouped together in just little different videos, mainly because for the first 2 weeks I was actually quite sick, so I couldn't record because I didn't have my voice really in recording order. And later next month I'm actually moving, so there's going to be a lot of stuff around here. But I'm still intending to talk about it because, if I'm going to be honest, I actually have been really enjoying Series 15 so far. We're 3 episodes in, four if you count the Christmas special, which I didn't talk about because Christmas specials are hard to talk about because they air on Christmas. Uh, it's always happened. So this is actually going to be sort of my long form thoughts on Joy of the World by Stephen Moffat, The Robot Revolution in Lux, both by Russell T Davies, and The Well, written by Russell T Davies and Sharma Angel. Sharma Angel Walfall. Honestly, all four of these episodes, I like them all at least a little bit. The weakest are probably The Robot Revolution and Joy of the World. Joy of the World, oddly enough, as a Christmas special, is very Stephen Moffat. For both better and for worse. Very much like Boom was, where Boom was mostly for better. Joy of the World in a lot of ways is for worse, mainly because Joy of the World is an episode where there is a 3 act structure, and this 3 act structure dealing is first act is very much the setup of the time hotel, and the third act is the resolution, but the second act is the act that actually blows them all out of the water. It has the doctors stuck on Earth in a hotel, living as a person, and it's some of the sweetest stuff that Stephen Moffat may have has possibly ever written. It's this great understanding of the character. Nothing particularly new for the Doctor as a whole. We've done large periods of time where the Doctor is stuck on Earth and having to live day to day. Even in the new series, The Power of Three did it. Though did it largely in a lot of ways as a joke. Um, and then, of course, you have the Third Doctor's era. The BBC books with the Eighth Doctor had him living through a century on Earth, and Big Finish Productions leading up to, uh, oddly enough, their sort of revamp they had Stranded, where the Eighth Doctor was stranded on Earth for a year. So Joy of the World doing that is nothing new, but the way it does it is just really nice. It's incredibly sweet, and it pairs the Doctor with this woman called Anita, played by Steph Dowali, and she's honestly just a better, she's just a better side character and a far deeper character than the titular Joy, which is a shame because Joy's played by Nicola Coughlan, who's an actress I really like. Well, I've really only seen her in Dairy Girls, but she's fantastic in Dairy Girls, and everyone who I know who's seen Bridgerton says she's great in Bridgerton. So, but Bridgerton is sort of just rom com that I isn't entirely my genre, but it's a genre that I like. Yeah, it's fine. Um, but Joy as a character is just kind of there. There's some, you know, very nice stuff with her about, not being with her mother when she died during COVID-19 because of lockdowns and she died on Christmas. It's a very sweet. Again, there's a lot of good stuff in Joy of the World. That's why if I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10 because it's actually fairly decent. It's just got a lot of problems, like oddly enough, a lot of the Christmas specials, but it's also very Stephen Moffat and it's Moffat doing something quite good or usually at least interesting. It's very uh it's very Moffat, very different. And I think it's kind of worth it. But by the time I actually get to the ending where Joy becomes the star of Bethlehem, it's this very weird little image that feels very overly Christmassy, which I feel like the resolution might have been better if it was a little more understated. It was generally more understated than this sort of big, almost really sappy ending that honestly didn't work for me. Um, Wrapping that up is it's trying to be a Christmassy romp, and while Moffat is usually very good at romps, it's a romp that like I thought was just fine. It was decent. It didn't hit me in a whole lot of super interesting places. It didn't have a whole lot to say. It really felt almost just like a stopgap between series of we need a Christmas special, so we're going to. Um, so we're, going to do that. It did bring back, the Villain Guard Corporation, which Moffat has been using Boom after he used it, introduced it way back in The Empty Child, which, is certainly a good idea for a villain. I like it, but, and, this whole idea of this briefcase that's going to kill you because it's a star seed. It's a lot of really, interesting, fun sci-fi ideas. Not enough time to explore them really, and again, you have that second act that he's just blowing everything out of the water. Um, in this really, really, everything that surrounds it, which is again, that's one of the biggest problems out there. There's just this 20-minute stretch that should have been its own episode and is should have been what the episode was about, and the rest of it just really wasn't. But as always, Chudicott was great as the 15th Doctor. It's there, it's fine. It's a Christmas special. And with the Christmas special out of the way, that actually can bring us pretty nicely into the Robot Revolution, the Series 15 premiere from 3 weeks ago now. Yeah, basically 3 weeks ago now. This is Russell T Davies' first of four, technically five. He did co-write one episode this series, but four scripts this series. And the Robot Revolution is actually a really interesting opening. We're introduced. A lot of it works because it's mainly a very classic Russell T Davies. We need to introduce a companion. Verada Sethu is playing Belinda Chandra, a nurse from the 24th of May, 2025. The 24th of May, 2025 being called out specifically here because, well, that's actually going to be very important for the series arc. Obviously, spoilers if you haven't. I don't think I actually said that at the top of the video, but spoilers for these episodes if you haven't seen them. Threat of the World's already nearly 6 months old at this point. Um, all these other episodes have had at least a day, but the Robot Revolution is interesting. It's very much a fine start. It's a good start. It's about, oddly enough, in a lot of ways, about the same level as Joy of the World, though I think the problems are differently. The plot of this one is actually pretty standard. It's a standard the Doctor comes in and saves a planet with revolution. But there's a lot of artifice and aesthetic that I think works particularly well. Peter Hoare is the one directing this. He actually last directed A Good Man Goes to War way back in 2011. So over, like, what, 13 years ago now? 14 years ago now? And the whole idea here is that Belinda is abducted from Earth by robots to a planet orbiting a star that an ex-boyfriend called Alan bought for her. It's one of those star certificates. And the aesthetics of the world is actually very 1950s science fiction. My friend Brian, I think, compared it to the 1990s science fiction, but I'm not entirely sure I see that. Aesthetically, it's very 50s with sort of this chrome futurism. A lot of the imagery feels very 1950s in terms of design and sort of what it's doing. As an episode, The Robot Revolution is actually trying to take a stance on artificial intelligence. And now I'm a very anti generative AI person, but I don't think this episode actually does a whole lot to explore why AI doesn't work and why or generative AI is something wrong. Now, that kind of makes sense. This series was actually being shot in 2023, so we're actually nearly 2 years out of where they actually started shooting this. This was shot while the 60th anniversary was airing, which is it means that commentary like this is going to feel out of date, especially because generative AI was already getting big in 2023, but it exploded into just sort of very recently into sort of the terrible thing that it is now. And the Robot Revolution really wants to explore that, but it doesn't really know how. More interestingly, it's more an exploration of, well, the villain, the great AI generator, is revealed to actually be the ex-boyfriend of Belinda Chandra, who is kind of, well, he's an incel. the episode outright quotes Planet of the Incels, and Russell T Davies doesn't do the worst job he perfectly could by again exploring the incel mindset. Alan's played by Johnny Green, who actually gives a really slimeball performance, and I mean that in the best way possible. There's like this. There's a lot of great little ticks to the performance and great little ticks to the script that you realize, like, oh. And when we eventually get the flashbacks to Al being brought to the planet Miss Belinda Chandra One, um, because and there's a lot of little seeding of his sort of misogyny and a lot of what what happens. Um, but it's there. It's interesting. It's a good enough plot. It's a good enough plot. It's fine. Um, it's also really trying to set up this whole idea of a time distortion, and the Doctor can't get Belinda back to May 24th, 2025. We haven't explored why he can't try to get close and then wait the extra time, or a little bit before, a little bit after. But that's one of those things where it's kind of just that's a problem with time travel stories in general. I kind of wish Davies would have addressed it at least briefly, and there's a chance we will at some point during this series, especially with what's coming next week from at the time of recording. Um, I am recording this after episode 3 has aired. I'm recording these all in one because I ran out of time. But it's a great setup for the arc. Veronica Sethu actually really establishes herself quite well as Belinda Chandra. We are recognizing that she was in Boom as Mundy Flynn, and I think the whole idea is that Mundy's is meant to be a descendant of her, someone related in the far future, which I suppose is fine. Davies loves to do this when he recasts actresses. He did it with Freema Agyeman playing a character in Army of Ghosts and Doomsday before she became Martha Jones the next series. It's fine, but I don't think it's necessary. It does kind of stop the episode dead just a little bit. I also actually really like how the episode kind of just ends, like resolves with Alan being reduced to a sperm and egg and being literally vacuumed up. Well, it was really funny anticlimax. It doesn't quite work. The episode is decent. I actually probably liked it more than Space Babies last year. And Space Babies thought was fine, though I've kind of soured on that just after time. And this might be one where after time I find myself disliking it or disliking it, liking it less than I did. Like this is fine. It's fine. Um, I also really do like the relationship between Belinda and the Doctor. It's very much doing a Belinda doesn't want to travel. She wants to get home, and the Doctor desperately wants a friend to travel with, and he's doing a lot of his sort of manipulation tactics, which is Cutwell plays very well and makes it so charming that even the viewer is like, oh, this isn't a thing. But then you have Belinda calling him out. It's a very nice tension. I hope it's something that actually will continue to be pushed and explored and made interesting, basically with where this series is going. Um, it's it the Robot Religion is it's a solid episode. It's solid. It's good. It's a good start. I'm actually also very glad that the decision was made in airing these not to do a double episode first week. Um, Mainly because I'm going to be honest, Doctor Who actually struggles with the lower episode count. It really does. Doctor Who is because it's a series that needs to reinvent itself every week with a new setting, or every story with a new setting. If we're doing two-parters, and I really wish we were doing more two-parters in general. I always have because Doctor Who works best when you have time to play. We need more time to play. Also, I should probably mention throughout all of these episodes, Mrs. Flood, played by Anita Dobson, appears and is collecting information slash things about the Doctor. I've read some of the leaks. I'm not going to reveal the leaks here, but I have a feeling they might be at least partially true. Possible they could be fake. There's also some interesting stuff where the character Mrs. Flood is literally doing the same thing that Susan Twist was doing last series. Like it's the exact same. So I don't know if that's just Davies reusing a plot point or he's actually doing something there. It's probably the former, but I kind of hope it's the latter. I kind of really do hope it's the latter because it could be really interesting for Rusty Davies to do something different and interesting. Uh, but yeah, Robot Revolution was actually. pretty good. It was a good start. Unimpressive, but just decent, solid little story. It has some problems, some big problems. One of these days, I'm going to be go through and actually continue my essays on the revival, like I did in 2023 on my blog. If you haven't read them, go read them. I did all of the RTD2 era, or the RTD's first run, and I'll eventually get back to doing Stephen Moffat and then Jim Nielsen now the second era, probably when it's all over. Um, yeah, Robo Revolution was a fine enough start. And that takes us to Lux. The penultimate episode I'm talking about today, the one written by Russell T Davies and directed by Amanda Bracci. Bracci will also direct the well and aka the final episode we're talking about today. But before that, let's talk about Lux. Lux is it's our Pantheon episode, or our explicit Pantheon episode this series. We're probably going to get some Pantheon stuff in the finale at the end of the year, which will be interesting. Now, actually, in terms of the Pantheon, I actually like the idea. I don't always love the way Davies has used it. I think in the giggle it works pretty okay, and I think it works really well in the Devil's Chord, but that's partially because of Jinx Monsoon's performance. And it works really well here in Lux, and it works well in The Legend of Ruby Sunday when we're revealing Sutek and we realize we got Gabriel Wolf back, but then Davies doesn't quite do as much with it. But I like the idea, especially in concept. Very much love Doctor Who, where the Doctor isn't the highest authority. The Doctor should be a rebel, rebelling on essentially this stuffy group of bureaucrats that are the Time Lords. That's sort of the Holmesian thing, or running away, like, or just morally indignantly angry because the techno gods that are the Time Lords in the war games don't want to help other people. It's all a thing. But Lux is probably the best use of the gods so far, mainly at least the most solid. Some of that might be down because Lux, our god, or Mr. Ring-a-Ding, is voiced by Alan Cumming. Alan Cumming being one of those, again, a great over-the-top actor, an actor who can really, really go from funny to incredibly terrifying just like that. And Lux's episode is Davies trying to do some Doctor Who deconstruction type things, though it isn't always work. Um, there's a large sequence in the episode where where Lux turns the Doctor and Belinda into beings of light. That first cartoons they become more three dimensional, and then we literally break the fourth wall so they meet Doctor Who fans. That these Doctor Who fans are created by Lux, and a lot of oddly enough, the Doctor Who fan stuff reads like The Whiz Kid and the Greatest Show in the Galaxy. A lot of people didn't like this sequence, and I have some problems with the sequence. I actually think that having them come back post credits is just a little like that's a little too having your cake and eating it too. Pull that out, and maybe not going on so much about how much Doctor Who means to them and how it's changed their lives and how amazing it is. Because mainly that doesn't feel like it's nearly as much of a deconstruction. It feels like it may not be nearly as much of a deconstruction as it is. It could also very much be doing a deconstruction thing of playing around with Davies knowing the tropes. Like there's a point where the score gets so damn loud that it's not commented on, but it feels like they knew what they were doing with the complaints of Murray Gold always blasting music to make you feel something. Because let's be honest, that is a criticism of Murray Gold that is often very valid, especially during the Moffat era. And I'd say some of this era so far has also had some moments where Murray Gold's score gets really, really almost undeniably so. But it's very much a sequence that I think largely works. Oddly enough, I kind of wish the animated sequence. I kind of wish it was long. This is an episode I kind of wish was longer. It runs about 45 minutes, as all these episodes have been. Even Joy to the World, our Christmas special, only ran about 50. And The Well, oddly enough, which I'll be talking about next, also ran 50. Kind of wish this was longer. Oddly enough, my friend Kian mentioned it would actually make a really good three-parter in the style of a McCoy story, and I have to agree more. I think that would take it from really good to a one of the all-time greats if we had like a little more time and actually had just a little more time to stretch these out. And that has been a consistent problem with Russell T Davies' second era. And I think a lot of that comes just down to the way TV is produced now, where we're only getting 8 episode series of things. It's a problem. A lot of shows just need more time to breathe. I know people want like the best effects and things, but like generally in television, if we can just dial down some of these film style effects and get back to making things longer with robust writers' rooms and things, it would be great. But this is good. as is. Now we are actually set in 1952 Miami, and Davies does acknowledge the fact that the leads of the show are both two people of color. I don't entirely know how tactful I would say he does it. I mean, segregation is a thing. It gets acknowledged, and it is sort of this undercurrent here, though it isn't actually explored too much. There is a racist cop that's then revealed to actually be a just another reality created by Lux, which I don't want to say I wish the racist cop was really just a racist cop and that the white woman who turned them in really was that racist, but I feel like it might have actually challenged some things and gone oddly enough responded to some of the criticisms that non-white fans of Doctor Who had against Dot and Bubble. Um, but I'm also white, so I don't entirely know if I can particularly speak to that with any sort of real tact or authority. Definitely not with any authority. But outside of that, really enjoyed Lux. I will say, actually, the sort of little one, Mr. Ringading's design is very Dave Fleischer, early Mickey Mouse. It's looking at 1930s cartoons, and the whole thing is just a classic. It's a very like Scooby Doo style haunted house type thing, and that structure actually works really, really well. Um, it's a thing that it's a lot of fun. It means we can also do a lot of deconstruction on what Doctor Who means, especially with that sequence with the fans and the fact that they still exist at the end. Um, but it's a solid episode. It's got it's a great run around. I love the use of the cameras. I love the animated sequence, and I like that it's tongue in cheek, knowing that we have to confess we actually have to have character development to become three-dimensional again. Uh, which again feels like it's more like Davies wanting to respond to a lot of the criticisms of Doctor Who in general, and I think it largely works. Eh, Davies doesn't take probably as many shots as I think he may have even wanted to at himself. Um, Probably because I don't know if he actually would. It's hard to criticize oneself, especially if you're putting that criticism in a television show that's going to be watched by millions of people. And these episodes have been watched by millions of people, even if the overnights aren't good. There are people watching on streaming, and it's getting views that are comparable to what other things are getting on airing. So it's one of those things that I think works. But the episode it's good. I like a lot of it. It's actually kind of it and The Well are actually the two that I'm actually really interested in reading the novelizations for because the Robot Revolution, um, Lux, and The Well were all announced as getting new novelizations, as well as Joy to the World, I believe, got one. Um, like they all are getting they're getting novelizations. Una McCormick's doing one. Um, I don't think Joy to the World actually got one. Maybe I'm thinking of Empire of Death or Church on Ruby Road because that got a hardcover one. Um, and Empire of Death is getting one in the slot, yeah. Um, but we're getting novelizations just these first three episodes, which is also kind of interesting because I'm curious to see if that means we're actually going to have these be the best episodes of the series, which if they are, we got two really great episodes. One that's a contender for God was best. I don't think that's the well. We'll talk about that in just a bit. It feels like I really want to get to the well, which is kind of funny. Um, um, but it's Lux is good. It furthers the Doctor and Belinda's dynamic. It's a good story, but it's kind of a shame that literally the next episode then blows it out of the water. So we're ending today with the well. This is going to be your last spoiler warning for this because this is one I think you should go in blind. This is an episode that had a lot of its details leaked. So final spoiler warning. this is a sequel to Midnight, like, and it's actually really good. Russell T Davies and Charmaine Angel Waffle kind of did the impossible. Now, I'm actually going to start by saying this. I think what happened here is that Charmaine Angel Waffle pitched a story like this, and Davies was the one who connected it to Midnight. I don't think someone would come in and, let's say, a new writer would come in and say, let's do a sequel to Midnight. I also don't think Davies would do let's do a sequel to Midnight because despite in terms of structure and storytelling, Davies is a very predictable writer. He hasn't actively been trying to, with the second era, just to relive the greatest hits. It's one of the things that I think people are a little unfair on. He, isn't trying to relive his greatest hits. He's been trying to do things differently, and The Well is different. It's it's not a retread of Midnight. The creature actually works slightly differently. Instead of infiltrating people, it seems to be stuck behind them, and it's actually very clever in that we don't ever properly see the creature. We sometimes see a silhouette, and there are some screenshots going of the costume going around on social media of people mainly pausing the frames where it happens in really quick shots. It's the point is the costume itself isn't what the creature's supposed to look like. It's a silhouette. It's supposed to represent it. Like it's something you're not supposed to, go frame by frame to get an idea of what it looks like. That's the point. Um, it's one of those things where we're doing a lot of interesting things with the creature. And the whole idea is that the Doctor and Belinda are looking for a reading. They get stuck in the far future, mainly 500,000 years. And it turns out that the planet Midnight in the future became a mining colony that now has no life, importantly, no life signs. Everybody and all the mirrors have been shattered. Except one person is alive. Cook. Alice Fenley, who is played brilliantly by Rose Eiling Ellis. She gives this incredibly human and incredibly like I don't want to call her the performance creepy, but it has this underlying just sort of frightening nature because well, the implication is that by the end is you kind of realize she might have been dead the whole time. I know that people are saying that's a theory, but I'd argue it's not a theory. I argue that's text. We establish that there are no life signs, and then suddenly there's a heartbeat and she's alive. The creature is behind her. So you realize that, and that this is an episode where this creature, who is the same creature from Midnight, we even get a flashback to Midnight, remembers the Doctor, knows his name. It was inside his head at the end of Midnight. That is being established, and he's trying to get out. And at the end, it all the evidence on screen, it very most likely escaped. The last shot tries to play it ambiguous, but it's very much one of those things where there are some hints that no, this thing got out. And I kind of hope we leave it there. I hope we don't get another sequel to Midnight or a sequel to The Well. Because, well, I think this largely works the way that like Midnight, it works as a standalone. A lot of this episode is trying not to be Midnight again. If it was, you wouldn't have a good episode. It would be a problem. And we don't. We have a very good episode. A contender for God was best. I think I might prefer this to 73 yards, honestly. 'Cause I still adore 73 yards to bits. That one's fantastic. But it's another amazing episode. And it's great. It's full of tension. And it's kind of simple. While Midnight is layering back the themes, the sense of human nature to our basest elements to the point where the kettle's going to boil over and everyone's going to try to murder each other. The Well is trying to do something a little more different. It's trying to do a little more standard, almost standard horror, for lack of a better term. while still trying to make sure that we don't actually know much about the creature by the end of it. It is actually credited as it has no name in the credits, but that's because again, this time there's an actual silhouette. Like because we're doing instead of doing it in a while we are in a confined colony, the rooms are actually intentionally a lot bigger. It's instead of playing on that fear of being in a confined space, it's almost doing the opposite fear of being in an open space, but there's just something just outside your vision that you can't see. Um, Oddly enough, a lot of the same fear that the episode Listen was going for, except this actually, unlike Listen, this actually has things to say and doesn't try to like pretend to be cleverer than it is. It's not pretending to be smart like Stephen Moffat's script. Um, it's just telling a really good horror story. It also has some really interesting things to demonstrate about ability. Alice being deaf and disabled, the doctor speaks to her almost exclusively in British Sign Language, subtitled both on screen and these cool devices for the rest of the military team coming in to try to figure out what happened to this colony, and for the audience's benefit, who may not see it. But it's again the whole idea is that because she's disabled, she must be trusted, and she should be she's well she must be trusted by the doctor, but the rest of the troopers don't immediately trust her. They're actually pretty mistrustful. There's one where the doctor has to just sign something without saying it and is called out for, no private conversations. Really, really adding to a lot for the tension. Um, a lot of the ideas that this creature has waited a long time and it will still be waiting. Things are very weird. And the way we're just are slowly set up, just sort of is there something behind you? And are things, going to, is there something going to attack you? It's great. It does read like this in a lot of ways that this was a script that was retroactively made a sequel instead of naturally being a sequel. And I can't quite tell if that hurts the episode or not. I would be interested to see what the original pitch was like, especially because this is an episode that Davies came to co-write after an original pitch. Angel Waffle is apparently very new to television, or at least that's what I've heard. I'm not actually doing a whole lot of research, so I'm because I don't want to try to get spoiled on other things. But I don't think they're new. But it's nice to it's nice to have a new writer, and the script doesn't feel very Davies. Like Davies clearly had a hand in it, but a lot of the ideas we're playing with aren't just Davies. There are other influences there, and I think that's genuinely great. And it much like Rogue did, it feels like a breath of fresh air because we're not having someone who's been working on this franchise for getting close to 30 years now. Um, we're still writing the bulk of the episodes, which is why I'm actually really excited for this current run from The Well to episode 6, the Intergalactic Song Contest, because it's all either new writers or, in next week's case, Pete McTeague, who only wrote for the Chibnall era, though when we talk about when I actually see Lucky Day and that releases, I'm sure I'll have thoughts. But yeah, The Well is just utterly fantastic. It's brilliant. It's possibly got was best. I could see this becoming a 10 out of 10. Currently, I'm hovering at like a 9.5 because I'm like, there's things, but it's one of those things where like the more I think about it, the more I like it, and the more I kind of just want to go and rewatch it immediately. Which again, I felt that way for 73 Yards and Dot Bubble and even Boo. Like it's the Doctor Who that I love. I've been loving what the series does. I will say stay off social media because honestly, I'm kind of being fed up with the Doctor Who social media's fan presence. Like, ever since the Chibnall era, it seems like even creators that aren't, or Doctor Who fans that aren't total bigots who are just going to hate either way are kind of letting some of their biases show. I think because they kind of want a rose tinted nostalgia era of Doctor Who, even though that's kind of what we're getting, but it's kind of not. And I also kind of just want Doctor Who to move on from Davies in general, not because Davies is bad, but because he's been in charge of this. He's been a big part of the show for the last 30 years. We need more new blood. Like that's one thing that I really, really want. But the Well was utterly fantastic. Amanda Brachke also directed this one, because this was the other one that she directed. uh, this year, so it's going to be really, really interesting to see where everything goes. And I'm also kind of really want to get to the novelization of this, but that's my big catch up on the 4 episodes of Doctor Who that I missed. You know, let's get a conversation going. Let me know in the comments. What did you think of these episodes? Tell me I'm wrong. I'm sure people will because a lot of people do. If you like what I do, you can go check out Blood Donut Studios, where I am a co-host of a Fresh Face Comics, a comic book podcast, as well as my blog, where I write reviews of a lot of science fiction. I've been doing a lot of Star Trek, and I've been doing some more Doctor Who books recently there, so that has been a lot of fun. Um, I'll be trying to get these out as best as I can. I may end up doing them in blocks. I maybe only be doing 1 episode. I may be doing 2 at a time. We'll see. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.